Hello and welcome once more, everyone. Do you want to know if a servant is good enough to spend your hard-earned Saint Quartz on? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to the FGO Gacha Guide. Today, our topic servant is the kindly grandma, Europa. We will cover all the points you can see on screen right now, but before we go into any of these, a quick fun fact with Europa. Her name is theorized to be the origin of the name for the country of Europe itself. And the white bull she rides is the bull that eventually ascends to the heavens as the constellation Taurus. I think these are some pretty neat facts about her. Now, moving on to my personal opinion of her. Europa's pretty good. She has a good skill set. She has some pretty decent damage. Honestly, her biggest weakness is just the fact that at the moment, she is not very much in the meta as an AoE buster servant. But in time, a certain fox will be released and allow her to be able to compete with her current opponents such as Achilles and Ryder Da Vinci, who are able to clear waves with ease. She'll be up there and able to do a little bit of that herself. Until then, she will have some issues that makes it a little hard to use her at the moment. But let's look into what kind of stats she has and see why this is. So, Europa is a 5-star rider, meaning she is super effective against casters and weak against assassins. At level 90, she has 11,737 attack, which is above average for a 5-star servant, while her HP is 12,571, which is quite low for a 5-star servant to make up for her attack being pretty good. Her hidden stats show that her MP gain on hit is 0.58%, this is average. As for her cards, her quick card has 3 hits, her arts cards have 3 hits, her buster cards have 1 hit, and her extra card has 5 hits. This is a pretty low hit count overall, especially for a modern day servant. Taking a look at her star absorption, aka the priority she has to get critical stars on her cards over other servants, it is at 205. This is very high, making it very easy to get stars over onto her cards. As for her star generation and creating those stars, it is only a 8.9% rate, which is a little bit below average. All in all, looking at the various stats that she has, her stats are a little bit above average, but her kit doesn't take advantage of some of her strengths. For example, she has no critical damage increasing, and she doesn't really create critical stars all that well, so getting stars onto her and making those crits happen and making those crits hurt aren't something she's very good at, so the star absorption is a little bit of a wasted stat. Taking a look at her deck and NP, her deck contains 2 arts cards, 1 quick card, and 2 buster cards. This is our standard 2-1-2 deck that most generalized servants have overall. Moving on, we see her noble phantasm, Cyphrito Talos, Bronze Giant Ultra Heavy Mallet. Is an AoE buster noble phantasm that hits 4 times. It will increase her own defense by 50% for the turn she uses it, which activates first. Deals damage to all enemies, and finally increases her buster performance for this turn and activates before damage by 20 to 40%. So this is a decent NP. It has a nice self-buff for more damage to help clear the tankier enemies. The fact that it has a defense increase for the single turn as well seems to indicate that she is intended for challenge fights, when often challenge fights are single target enemies, and we're going to see a little bit more of that as we dive into her skills right after we hit her passives right now. Taking a look at her passives, first off we have Magic Resistance C, which increases her debuff resistance by 15%, Riding A+, increasing her quick performance by 11%, and Divinity C, increasing her own damage by 150. These passives all suck on Europa. She only has 1 quick card for the riding passive, so doesn't get to take much advantage of that. Magic Resistance is a garbage passive no matter what, and 150 damage is absolutely nothing versus enemies with hundreds of thousands to millions of health if you're even going to consider taking her into a challenge quest. Honestly, she basically has no passives because these are so bad. Might as well ignore them. So let's ignore them and move on to her skills. First off, our first skill is Princess of Purity. This gives her invincibility for 3 hits, and increases her debuff resistance for 3 times by 50 to 100%. The strongest part of this skill, which makes it so great, is there is no time limit on either of these effects. The self-invincibility and debuff resistance will stay until those hits apply to her. Whether it is resisting some sort of debuff application, like an attack down, a defense down, whatever, or she is hit 3 times, she will continue to keep both of these buffs. And at a 6-turn cooldown at max level, that means that it's very easy for her to keep invincibility stacked almost all the time, if not for the entire duration of a fight, greatly increasing her tankiness. Moving on, we have skill number 2, Affection of the Chief God. This increases her arts and buster performance for 3 turns by 20 to 30% on each of them, and charges her MP gauge by 20 to 30%. Another very good skill. Everything here is what you want. This buffs every card she has but her 1 quick card, including her MP card, and gives her a much needed charge skill. It's just a fantastic offensive spell. And looking at her final skill, we have the White Bull of the Chief God. This has a 60% chance to charm all enemies for 1 turn. It will reduce all enemies' defense for 3 turns by 10 to 20%, and reduce all enemies' critical attack chance for 3 turns by 10 to 20%. So, another rather defensive skill overall. This is a decent skill for challenge fights, as reducing crits is usually the thing you gotta deal with the most, and for farming, reducing defense makes it easier to clear at least the wave that you use this on. As you can see by her skills and her MP, Europa is really built to do some solid damage and be extremely tanky. She has a lot of potential power for challenge fights, but again though, she's an AoE servant and most challenge fights are single target, so the design kind of clashes with the majority of what she specializes against. Every so often you'll find an AoE challenge fight, but usually the way that works is there's one large enemy that might be a caster, for example, and they will purposefully put with said large enemy some smaller enemies that are the opposite of their of the large enemy's class, such as some assassins, to make it harder for you to just bring in AoE Rider. So really, at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to use her in what her skills say she should be used for. Clashing design is really weird when Delightworks comes up with it. Now let's take a look at what materials we need to level up these skills we've got. Well, I've got bad news, everyone. Considering this is a new Lost Belt servant, that means there's some new Lost Belt materials for us to farm. It starts off easy with 6 Spirit Roots per skill, followed by 18 Yggdrasil Seeds, then we have 24 Crowns of Radiant Silver, and finally 10 Comet Shards per skill. Both the Crowns of Radiant Silver and the Comet Shards are completely new materials, so people are going to have to farm quite a bit of them if they want to level up Europa's skills. All in all, to max out everything, the materials you need are going to be 18 Roots, 48 Seeds, 72 Crowns, and 30 Comet Shards. The Crowns especially will take quite some time to farm up, as 72 is a lot of a completely new material to need. So how does Europa stack up against her competition, though? Is it worth your time to farm this stuff? Let's take a look at the comparisons. Here are all the 5-star riders she's competing against. First off, we have Francis Drake, we have Iskander, then we Ozymandias, we have Quetzalcoatl, we have Artoria Rider Alter, Ivan the Terrible, Achilles, Linus, and Lolly da Vinci. Now, the reason that I've listed them all is because Europa is designed as a servant that is both decent at farming waves and set up with her skills to go into challenge fights, which means she's competing for both of these roles with pretty much every 5-star rider that you can think of, basically. When it comes to clearing the AoE waves, she does pretty high damage and can compete with the other heavy hitters, such as your Iskander and your Ivan the Terrible. But when it comes to clearing multiple waves, that's where we run into a problem. She doesn't really have the ability to loop as of yet, so she can't compete even remotely with Achilles or Lolly da Vinci, who both have the capability to loop from one from one wave to the next without too much issue. So for now, she really falls flat compared to those two when it comes to farming AoE waves in a more generalized sense. She's good for clearing one wave, but nothing beyond that, and it's a lot more convenient to have a servant that can loop, like Achilles or Lolly Da Vinci. She fits right there with Iskander and Ivan, where she can do it just fine, and she'll put out more damage than Achilles or Lolly Da Vinci might, but she's not gonna have that loop potential. Also with Francis Drake, I should say. Now, when compared to the other servants out there, and looking at challenge fights, she's easily the best AoE challenge fight rider, clearing the bar for all of the others without much issue. However, her damage compared to a single target servant like Ozymandias or Quetzalcoatl or Artoria Rider Alter is not even comparable. Single target damage is always going to crush out what an AoE servant can do. So she's really in this awkward state where she's able to do farming and she's able to do challenge quests, but she is outclassed in both respects by other servants out there. And even when the certain fox lady that allows Buster looping memes to happen comes out, she does still have a problem in that she only has a 30% self-charge. Meanwhile, Francis Drake has a 50% self-charge and thus is better for it than her. So at the end of the day, while she's fantastic as an AoE rider for a challenge fight, you're not going to find many fights for that. And most of what you're going to try and throw her at, she's going to run into some issue where one of her contemporaries is going to be able to defeat her in terms of viability. But, as I always say, you roll with your heart, or genitals, whatever tells you to roll. And if you do roll for Europa, how should you prioritize your skill leveling? Well, I think it looks something like this. The second skill, I'd say, is the first one and most important to try and max out, as it scales the highest, it's the big damage increase, and it's an NP charge. It's everything you want in a single skill. Then I would go for her third skill. It scales the defense reduction and the crit chance reduction pretty decently, which is the more offensive thing that you can do, and usually being more offensive is better than being more defensive. But even if we didn't already have an amazing defensive skill, it doesn't scale very well compared to the other skills. All it scales is the debuff resistance, and, you know, that's a nice little boost and everything, but what you're really using the first skill for is that self-invincibility, and so leveling it is mostly for the cooldown reduction rather than anything else. On top of that, this first skill does absolutely nothing unless you're throwing her into a challenge fight, so if you have no plans to throw her into a challenge fight, you don't even need to think about leveling it. You can leave it at level 1 for all anyone should care. Moving on, let's take a look at the craft essences that I would suggest for her. As a Buster-focused AoE servant with some tankiness on her, I suggest focusing on her Buster aspects mostly. Aerial Drive is a really good event CE, giving 10% MP damage up, 10% Buster up, and 50% starting MP charge. Golden Sumo Tournament is an older event CE that's also a great choice for the older players. It gives 15% attack up and a 50% starting MP charge. And finally, the Poolside Bar is a recent Gacha CE from this recent summer. It gives 10 or 15% at max limit broken Buster up, 10 or 15% max limit broken MP generation up, and 15 or 20% max limit broken MP damage up, all things that Europa wants to take into a fight. And as always, if you have a Kaleidoscope or a max limit broken imaginary element, she has a 30% self MP charge and can immediately use an MP like that if you're just going for a quick wave clear with her. You know, Kaleidoscope and imaginary element are always going to be glued here for your fast NPs. Now, as for servants to group her with and send her into battle with, oh look, it's Waver! Oh, what a shock, he made it to the list again. Waver's got a 50% MP charge up, attack up, critical damage up. It's a no-brainer to bring Waver with pretty much everyone. Overwork that man. Moving on, we've got Merlin as our go-to Buster supporter. He brings NP charge, he brings star generation, he brings attack up, he brings invincibility in an AoE for a turn, he brings healing, he brings everything that you could ever want in a challenge fight. Therefore, if you're going into a challenge fight, Merlin is the man to bring. And finally, Ozymandias actually pairs with her quite well. If you're going into a challenge fight, and you need to clear both AoE, but there's a single target large enemy that you want to deal with, Ozzy is a great main attack person to bring, while Europa is your secondary attacker. He also is Buster, so he has the same supports that he likes to bring, so Merlin is great with him as well. He helps cover damage better as a single target unit. He brings AoE buffs that can help Europa's damage fulfill even higher, an AoE NP charge to help get Europa and whoever the third is get to their MP even faster. And he himself is also tanky, so the two of them put together are basically an unkillable pair of riders that you can throw at any sort of AoE caster fight. So quick too long didn't watch here. Europa is solid. She's pretty good. She can dish out some good damage. She has very good skills overall. She can be used in both AoE clearing and challenge fights, so she's got flexibility. The main issue is being a little out of meta right now, being an AoE servant designed for challenge fights, meaning that her specialty doesn't come up very often. But if you do need another reason to roll for her, she'll give you lap pillows and candy. And who doesn't want that? Let me know your opinions on Europa, and if you enjoyed this video, follow me on Twitch, join my Discord and all that. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Good luck on your rolls, like, comment, subscribe, all that, blah, blah, blah. See you, everybody.